So I'm always going to look at it because there's new ways of thinking, there's new technologies, there's new information that comes, and we want to be able to adjust and iterate on that.
My name is Matt Reiner, managing partner at Capital Investment Advisors, CEO of Wellness Strategies, an author, podcast host, and also a speaker to the wealth management community. My mission is to help every family in this country have access and be served by a human financial advisor. That we all have to live in the moment and not try to force progress too quickly. Let it happen and commit to a long-term strategy in your life, in your business, and in your investment portfolio.
And now, your host and my dad, Matt Reiner.
Katie Brown, welcome to the Future Proof Advisor podcast. How are you doing today?
Hi, Matt. Thank you so much. I am doing wonderful. We're actually seeing a little bit of sunshine today, which is a nice break from our rain.
It is always better sunny than rainy. It brings more smiles to the faces, so I agree with that. I'm glad that you get you on a sunny day because it's going to be I'll be cheesy and call it a sunny conversation that we'll have. So that will be fantastic. But I am really excited to talk with you because I think that you all have built a really phenomenal firm in just a short period of time. It's almost only been just over 7 years, it seems like. And we're going to talk about how you navigated the beginning. I'm interested to talk about how you are navigating some of these like rapidly evolving times in our industry, in our world, as you build a firm, and then dive into client experience if we get time. And I don't take us on too many tangents along the way. But before we get into that, I always like to start the podcast by getting to know our guest. And I'm always curious, what did the 13-year-old Katie Brown want to be when she grew up?
I love it. Something with math and sciences. And I'm disappointed that I can't give you a fully formed answer because I feel as if life was very scattered at 13.
That's fair enough.
Yeah. But the interesting thing is my parents were small business owners. And I don't think I realized at the time growing up how much of that rubbed off on me. But I spent a lot of time at their business, helping out anywhere I could, anywhere they were willing to pay me. and I think there were some seeds that were planted. But at the time, the math and sciences kind of really struck me.
What type of business were your parents in?
They had a shipping business. So like UPS, FedEx, DHL, they did a hodgepodge of different things with that. But it was really interesting, A, to see them working together, but then B, once again, to kind of learn a bit more about what happens in the background.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to see how, our lives are shaped by things that we aren't even aware of, right? That we're around, and that shapes the future of who we are. And I think it's such an interesting way of how we become who we are. And so I'm curious then now of the journey between the 13-year-old who is into math and sciences, working and are watching her parents build their own firms, to now you building your own wealth management firm, which aligns with the math, but not necessarily the sciences. So tell us about that journey of how you got here.
Yeah. Well, and interesting. So I went obviously to college. I attended York College in York, Pennsylvania. That's what brought me to Pennsylvania from after growing up in Michigan. And when I went to school, I was undeclared initially. But once again, took a lot of math and sciences. And eventually I recognized that I really had a pull toward finances. And just seeing, once again, my parents were small business owners and their company was successful enough to get, the four of us kids off to college and we always had everything that we needed, but I always sensed money was tight and I never really understood a lot of the planning that went into the background. Like I knew there was probably a more seamless way. They were working so hard and there's probably a more seamless way to accomplish some of the things that they wanted to accomplish. That was one of my kind of acknowledgments in college. The other thing coupled with that, though, is that if you don't mind me going into a little bit of family history here.
Please.
All right. my grandfather, my mother's father, passed away suddenly when my mom was actually 13. And their whole life trajectory turned very quickly because it was soon recognized by my grandmother that they had been living paycheck to paycheck in a very nice lifestyle, country clubs, beautiful homes, beautiful cars, but there was no savings. And so my mom's life was flipped very quickly. And there are a lot of great things that have come out of that. But once again, seeing my parents, struggle a little bit more, and then recognizing if there was more planning put into my grandparents' lives and more communication there, it probably would have been a very different experience for my mom and her siblings. So I think all of those little seeds that were planted, kind of over time, things that I grew up with, made me realize I really want to make a difference in the world of financial planning, kind of specifically, and obviously the investments to help support that plan.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, it is our we live in a movie of one, basically, that nobody else understands, and that movie changes our perspective of the world outside of us. And so, how you saw how your mom was dictated by how she was impacted later on, which then derived and decided how you wanted to make an impact later on. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm curious now that you have a firm that you're serving families and helping them ensure that they have the life that they want, independent in the protection in case something were to happen. When you think about wealth management firms and your firm specifically, I know you're on the Future Proof Advisor podcast, so I have to ask this question. It comes with the territory, but what does being a future proofed advisor mean to you? What does that look like when you think about the firm and the service and the offerings and the value you provide? What does that look like to you?
Honestly, I think being a future proof advisor to me means actively taking steps and trying to project our voice as leaders to really raise the bar of expectation for families and for individuals. I think that our industry has gone through an incredible transformation, but it's still, there's a lot of confusion for consumers for what an advisor could or should be doing depending on what their needs are and what their requests are. I think there's still a lot of confusion. And on the average, and I'm going to make this up, but on the average, I'm guessing that families don't necessarily recognize how much value a financial advisor could bring, how they can really truly support them across all the different financial facets of their life. And so one of my big goals, and my partner, Dennis Morton, and I, we really do want to be leaders to kind of open up the eyes of consumers to realize like we can be a huge support system for you and your families to make sure that your future is proofed, to make sure that you are okay. And so that's what I think about. And it takes a lot to get kind of at that forefront too. There's a lot of innovation that goes into there. There's a lot of building of your team, helping to support the community. And so there's a lot that goes into that. But I think eventually just raising that bar for what clients should expect.
In 7 years to get to, I mean, y'all are almost at, I'm not going to fast forward too much, but you're almost at $500 million in 7 years. And that's nothing to shake a stick at. I mean, that's impressive. People would love to be at that point. Growth is hard in our industry. So I'm curious, what has been y'all's biggest source of growth since the beginning? How have y'all been able to grow like y'all have in the past 7 years?
Our fourth hire, well, no, I'm going to say our second hire, our fourth person on the team. So it started out Dennis and I, and then we brought on an administrative assistant to support us. And then the very next hire was our director of marketing. And we knew that we were probably hiring very early for that role. And a lot of, businesses, a lot of firms don't hire that role until you are at $500 million or so more. We totally recognized that, but we also recognized much of how we had built our business in the previous firm. And we were fortunate that we were able to transition clients from the previous firm, and we had 97% retention. And
Yes.
in that process, so we started at right about $100 million, just over $100 million early on, and then we grew from there. But much of our growth, business development had come from being very present in the community, which we still are very present as a firm in our community. I think almost every member of our team, contributes in some way, whether volunteering on a board, volunteering time, whatever the case may be. We run a lot of drives, donation drives. But Dennis and I recognize if we want to grow at the pace that we think we are capable of, or capable of designing a firm to grow at, we can't be in every room. And so that is a lot of the reason that we hired Maddie Miller. She is our director of marketing early on, and she has been really phenomenal at helping us to amplify our voice in our community and beyond, and to really help build a strong presence where we're at.
Yeah, and I think that the idea of getting involved in the community, I know that people know that. I don't know if many firms do that really effectively. And I think that I think that be able to do that effectively, there's a lot of thought, there's a lot of effort, there's a lot of intention that has to go into that. And I think that it sounds like you all have really excelled at that. And as you think about growth, I wanted to shift over to growth in another sense, and that's like the evolution of what's going on in the world today. Not necessarily news headlines, but more of innovation and our industry as a whole. I mean, there you all are in like a growth stage. You all built the firm by outsourcing areas where you aren't necessarily the most proficient at, which I think is brilliant. But when it comes to running a firm, whether it's AI, whether it's regulation, whether it's M&A and PE money in our industry, I'm curious how you find or keep abreast with all of the information that's coming out and flowing out, and are able to understand and distill what's important to you all and what's not, while also staying informed of what is going on around you from that standpoint.
Yeah, it's a lot, isn't it?
It is a lot. It's a full-time job. It's a
It is a
full-time
full-
job.
Yeah. And it's a team effort. It's definitely a team effort. So we do lean on various members of the team. John Kerstetter here is our financial planning strategist, and he is constantly researching, communicating with different vendors that we utilize, or different vendors that we are evaluating. And so he kind of champions the financial planning side, and sometimes we'll bring ideas to the table. So, Dennis or I and actually just about all of the team members will attend different conferences at different times. And and we always come back and we debrief. Actually, Maddie just got back from the Jolt conference. We haven't had a chance to go through all the nitty gritty stuff yet, but she brought forward a couple of ideas. So, going out into kind of the world a little bit definitely helps. We have an outside investment strategist team, and through that team, obviously we have our monthly investment committee meetings, but they also open up their network of other advisory firms too. And so sometimes we're collaborating with other firms out there. We have a handful of firms that we do collaborate with on a consistent basis that we've just, met out and about at different times, and appreciate the work that one another is doing. Dennis and I also, we have a business coach that we started working with him about 2 months after launching Morton Brown, and he's really been instrumental in helping us step outside of the business, step outside of the day to day, and really kind of focus on the business and think through, all right, what is running smoothly? Where do we need more efficiencies? How do we solve for that? Who can we talk to? Who can we learn from? And so there's, like I said, I think every single person inside of the office has something in our firm that has something that they are the champion of, the expert of, and they're looking for ways to improve what we're doing and how we're doing it. And then plus we're gathering as many outside voices as we can.
Yeah, and you mentioned business coach. I want to dig into that for a second.
Sure.
How would life be different without a business coach? Because I think that business coaches, I always find it interesting that people don't have business coaches these days. Because the best athletes in the world have coaches, and they're the best in their fields, and they still have coaches that are not the best in their fields, because you need another set of eyes. So I'm curious, how would life be different if you didn't have a business coach in your mind right now?
And we work with Steve Sandusky, and Steve, I think once again, Steve, it's really been great to have an outside accountability partner. somebody that can say, okay, you said you wanted to do that. You said this is where you're going. Now let's make sure that you're doing it. And if you're not, what's stopping you from doing it? And so I think he kind of, he pulls the reins a little bit and kind of keeps us on track, which is very, very helpful. I think the other huge benefit too of having, working with Steve and having a kind of third party at the table, Dennis and I are 50-50 partners. And sometimes, we'll throw an idea out there and one of us might be a little more excited about the idea than the other one. And sometimes we have a tough time reconciling that. And Steve is really good at helping us. And I say tough time reconciling it, like we don't fully see kind of where the difference is. He's really good at asking the right questions and getting us to kind of boil down to, okay, our levels of excitement are different. This is the part I like. This is the part you like. How do we solve for the middle part? And so once again, I think working with a coach to kind of streamline where we're going has been very instrumental in our growth.
Yeah, Steve's fantastic. I've been fortunate to be on his podcast a few times, and he's just a brilliant human being, and he's just great for the industry. And I think, what you mentioned there is the idea of, and what I was thinking of as you were talking is that as leaders, there's very few people that are there to hold us accountable. The accountability is the success of the firm. And this is where we can fall into the success trap where, hey, if we're successful, then we don't need that's our accountability. We're doing great. So we don't need anybody else in the room. But you need someone to hold you accountable. This is what you said you're going to do. This is what you're going to do it. And this is the outcome, so that you don't get lost in the cloud of, maybe success metrics that are just because of the market, but it's not necessarily because of what you're doing. So I think that is super important that y'all have. As I switching back gears to innovations for a second, I'm curious, what innovation are you, maybe it's AI, or likely maybe will be, what innovation are y'all most excited about these days?
So we just rolled out a new client app, or a Morton Brown app. And I am really excited to see there's still some integrations that are happening with it. We have some updates that are going to be rolled out here, some really great updates over the summertime. I'm really excited to see how that is going to transform our communication with clients, our ability to get them all the information that they want right at their fingertips in one place. That is something that we've kind of struggled with a little bit, in that, all right, you go here for that piece of information, there for that piece, and over here for that one. And so really trying to bring it together. I think that's probably right now the piece of innovation we are super excited about. If I could pick one thing to do all day, we wear a lot of different hats, but I would live inside of the financial plans. I absolutely love financial planning. So I do get very excited about, like you said, some kind of more AI tools that are coming into the financial planning industry. And I think some more that are still on the docket to hit the industry, that really integrate some of the artificial intelligence into the data gathering and the data input processes. I'm excited for that. But for what we're working on right now, I would definitely say our app. We're excited to see how that transforms some of the work that we do with clients.
I think that's fantastic. And I mean, you mentioned in some of our pre-discussions, that there's this desire to help, and I'm going to quote this, impact the experience people have with money, relationships, and life. And I'm assuming the app fits into that. But when you think about that, impacting the experience people have with money, relationships, and life, what does that mean to you? And what does that look like and feel like to the client?
So to me, that means, and positively impact it. Like I really want them, I really want clients to kind of reach a place of happy contentment. They're lighter. There's less weight on their shoulders. Like, okay, I get it. And it doesn't always come with the biggest pile of money, as you know, but it comes with that feeling of, I know I have enough for me. I know I have enough for my family. I can support the causes I want to support. And I have the freedom to do that. I have the freedom to live out other passions and desires and, do other things in my life because I don't have to worry about the financial piece. I think for the most part, that's what that means to me. And hopefully, once again, that the financial piece, you don't have to worry about it, but you know that it's there to support support the things that you want to do and to deepen the relationships that you have. So whether it's building experiences or other things or just freeing up the time to spend the time with others, I think that's how that all comes together.
Yeah. And I think, the idea of just the relief of less to worry about is like there's so much value in that you can't put a numerical value on, but that value is astronomical. When you think about the next 3 to 5 years and how your firm is going to evolve, it's going to grow, the industry is going to evolve and change. How does that experience evolve for the clients in your mind?
Yeah. I think that it does come, it's interesting because my my first week in this industry was actually 9/11. Not to take a
Mm.
whole detour, but now, been around almost 25 years from my first week working at a financial firm. And early on, I remember we would show up with a financial plan. And I was fortunate to start my career at an independent firm really focused on financial planning, and I totally fell in love with the financial planning piece of it. But we would show up with a financial plan that was, an inch thick and 100 pages. And 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 then even when technology started to come out, it was like, okay, you can look at all these things in all these places. I really think that the trend going forward is going to be narrowing that information flow, is going to be making reports more concise. Something we've been working on, and I think there's still a little bit more perfection to do, is the idea of like a one-page financial plan. Like just give me the highlights, give me the top line numbers. For those people that want to go in the weeds, we can go in the weeds. But I think from technology and everything else, I think it's narrowing that and making it more concise and clear, and then hopefully being able to deepen the relationship in other ways too, like to reach that point where clients once again feel confident in what's happening. They feel as if they have the information they need, and now let's figure out why that is so important to you.
Mm. I think that, the ability of simplifying, streamlining, and clearly articulating. And it's got to be, we got to be on the verge of where that is so much easier than ever before, right? Because the ability to distill information, synthesize information, and then, digest information is easier than ever before. I think as things are changing, right? You've been in the industry, like you said. I'm not trying to age you. You probably started when you're like 3 years old, so you've been in there for almost 25 years. But I'm curious because we're talking about innovation, we're talking about change, we're talking about how do we make like the value that we provide, helping understand clients understand the value that we provide and the services we can offer. What do you think is one thing that must change within our industry over the next 5 years just to ensure that we are delivering the highest and most impactful value that we can to more families? We always talk about what is it that we want to add. I always like to say, what is it that we need to change? What needs to be that tough decision as an industry in your mind? Because you've seen it change and evolve many a times through many difficult times as well. And now you're on the side of owning your own firm. So I'm curious of what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, if we're looking industry wide, and I don't know how quickly this can be solved for, but I think one of the biggest things that needs to change is incentives. I
Mm.
think incentives for financial advisors and aligning those better with, once again, I am a through and through, believer in the fiduciary standard in our industry, and I think making that a baseline and shifting corporate incentives to align with that, to really have the client in front of you, the person that is sitting across the table from you, that you are looking into their eyes and saying, what can I do for you and your family? I think some of that comes from corporate changes, and I think that will help to lead toward more just changes across the industry.
Well, I'm curious on your side from a how advisors are compensated standpoint. Do you believe that the model that when you started the industry, which was the AUM model, which is still the model today, but we've now added in planning and other services as well. Do you still think that the AUM model is the right model to incentivize advisors, or is there now, with new information and more information, a better model for advisors to be incentivized?
Yeah. I think it's definitely better than the commission-based model, the transactional-based model for sure. I don't think that it's perfect. I think that there probably is another iteration out there, but I think that that's difficult. I think that it's not, I think it would be changing the mindset of both advisors, corporations, and also clients. The AUM model, it's like paying your taxes. It's easy because you don't see it happen if if you're like a W-2 employee, and it's, it's taken care of, what you have to work with. When you shift to, other types of structures, fee structures, it's almost more eye-opening sometimes for clients, and like it can be jarring also, especially when you kind of normalize, what really you should be paid for the value that you're bringing. And I think that's tricky too, because I know something that we struggle with sometimes on our end, and have in our industry as a whole, is I know the majority of the value we're bringing is on the financial plan, because that's helping to avoid the big mistakes. And that's really, and it's helping to make the good decisions that are going to compound tremendously over time. But to put a dollar on what that's actually worth compared to an AUM fee in an account, that might be 1% of the account value, it's a changing of the mindset for sure. But I think eventually we probably will get to more of a minimal AUM that's really just focused, or really just pays for what you're doing in the investment side, and then probably other, fee for services on the other side.
Yeah, it's an interesting dilemma. It's this conversation that I know has been talked about for, I don't know, feels like forever now. But because there's this pros and cons, right? We're doing other services, and you should pay maybe a la carte for those services. But then the beauty of the AUM model, which is different than some other professional services models, is that it allows you to be more relational as opposed to making it feel transactional, right? And there's a value in that, that you can create more of a relationship, as opposed to having to feel like you have to pay your accountant or your lawyer on an hourly basis or whatever it may be, and it just doesn't feel as good, and it's a different relationship. So there's like all of these pros and cons, but I think you're right. As everything in this world, it's going to evolve. It just has to, from that standpoint. Katie Brown, this has been fantastic. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I have two questions to wrap it up for you, and we can do them lightning round style for you. The first one is I'm curious, outside of political side of questions, I always like to ask advisors that I talk to, what's the most common question your clients are asking you about these days?
Um, Honestly, I think it's, am I okay? Am I okay? That's for clients we've worked with for a while. Am I okay? Brand new people, or people that I run into, maybe not clients, but people that know what I do, or that know the industry that I'm in. It's still, what did the market do today?
Yeah. Unbelievable.
So, depends.
It's unbelievable.
Yes.
Everybody cares about the market, and I get it. And then the last question is, I said this, I think, to you earlier on the podcast, maybe before we start recording. This is a selfish venture for me, because I like to just talk to people, and talk to smart people like yourself, and learn from smart people like yourself. And I also like to learn by reading. So I always ask my guests, what's one book out there that you think everybody should read?
This has probably come up in other podcasts. I've listened to some of your podcasts, and I don't recollect off the top of my head if I heard somebody mention it, but I am a big fan of Morgan Housel, and I love the psychology of money. That, once again, that whole mindset of enough. I think that really resonates, not only for clients and myself, but also how we think about building the business, and balancing out life and priorities, and everything else.
If there is one book that should be required reading for financial advisors these days, that is the one book. I think it is fantastic. It's just such a good book. Katie, I can't thank you enough for spending some time with us here on the Future Proof Advisor podcast. I'm waving y'all's flag as you continue to build your firm, and can't wait to continue to watch your success. And I'm sure there's others that want to join in the forces of singing your praises. And so if they want to get in touch, or learn more about what y'all are doing, or just follow everything that you're doing, what's the best way for them to?
I would say probably just start on our website, mortonbrownfw.com. I'm also, all of our team members are on LinkedIn. We're on Facebook, all the places. But if you start on the website, that would probably be the easiest place. Yes. And thank you, Matt. This has been really fantastic. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, and we will continue it on, but continue doing all that you're doing for this industry. So appreciate it. And so stay well, be well, and keep on exploring. Thanks, Katie.